Watch a multi-lane arterial highway in Florida for long enough, and you will eventually see one of these. A tiny, utilitarian vehicle moving at speed, completely dwarfed by standard traffic. These are Japanese domestic market, or JDM, K mini trucks. Models like the Suzuki Carry, the Honda Acti, and the Daihatsu Hijet are arriving in Florida by the thousands. Here is the central paradox of their existence. Thousands of these trucks are driving around with valid state-issued license plates, yet operating them on these arterial corridors constitutes a direct statutory moving violation. And the legal problems do not stop at the state line. Many of the specific modern chassis flooding these exact warehouses are violating federal import laws just by being inside the country. We are going to deconstruct the specific regulatory arbitrage that dealerships use to deliberately misclassify these vehicles and secure those state plates. The entire market exists in the friction between two conflicting codes, the federal 25-year exemption rule and Florida Statute 320.01, governing mini trucks. That state-issued license plate creates a powerful false sense of security. It masks a multi-jurisdictional paperwork contradiction that transfers all the legal and financial risk directly from the importer to the unsuspecting buyer. If modern key trucks are federally restricted, we have to start by asking how they managed to cross U.S. borders in the first place. The baseline law governing vehicle imports is the federal 25-year exemption rule under Title 49. It states that vehicles 25 years or older are entirely exempt from modern federal motor vehicle safety standards. Take a close look at this document identifying an 11th or 12th generation Suzuki Carry. The body lines and headlight clusters place its production date well past 2002. Because this specific chassis is under 25 years old, it cannot legally be imported as a standard on-road motor vehicle. Customs should reject it immediately. This diagram illustrates how importers bypass that restriction. They use a customs declaration known as Form 352021, which allows the vehicle to enter the country under the strict classification of an off-road utility vehicle. The legal caveat is absolute. To clear customs, the importer must swear that the vehicle is permanently governed to 25 miles per hour and is strictly prohibited from use on any public highway. The contradiction happens the moment the vehicles leave the port. Importers swear to the federal government these trucks will remain off-road and then immediately submit them for state road registrations. The physical presence of a modern key truck on a U.S. road requires a sworn federal declaration of off-road use, a declaration that the owner violates the second they bolt a state plate to the bumper. So, how does a federally restricted off-road vehicle successfully pull a standard Florida license plate out of the state system? It relies on Form HSMV 82040. Licensed JDM dealers in Florida are granted in-house VIN verification authority, which gives them a direct electronic conduit to submit titling data to the state. Under Florida Statute 320.01, a key truck meets the exact statutory definition of a mini truck. Legally, this dictates that the dealer must assign it the restricted MT titling code. But dealers execute a specific titling arbitrage. Instead of using the MT code, they deliberately input standard passenger or truck codes, like TK or UT, into the digital form. This misclassification forces the system's hand. By feeding the database a TK code, the dealer intentionally bypasses the automated red flags that would normally block the registration, forcing the state to issue a plate. This data entry creates a highly asymmetric risk profile. The dealer exposes themselves to compliance audits and the potential revocation of their license by the state, but the buyer assumes a catastrophic burden. Because the title is based on fraudulent body type data, the state routinely performs retroactive title revocations during safety crackdowns, instantly rendering the vehicle illegal. The insurance implications are even worse. If you are in an accident on a high-speed road, your provider can immediately void your policy upon discovering the vehicle was fraudulently registered for an environment it was never legally allowed to enter. Dealerships leverage a minor data entry loophole to finalize a sale. They successfully shift all liability, while the buyer drives away with a useless title and zero legal protection. Even if we ignore the paperwork and assume a buyer has a perfectly valid title, the physical infrastructure of Florida creates a completely different set of problems. Florida Operational Statute 316.2122 dictates exactly where a key truck is physically permitted to drive. The limit is absolute. A mini truck may only be operated on streets where the posted speed limit is 35 miles per hour or less. The statute allows one highly specific exception. You can physically cross a higher speed roadway at a designated intersection. However, longitudinal driving, traveling along that higher speed corridor, is explicitly illegal. To see how this law actively traps drivers, look at this map of the intersection at Helmsman Drive and the US 1 corridor in Rockledge, Florida. The residential streets branching off Helmsman Drive carry local limits of 25 to 30 miles per hour. Inside this green zone, operating a key truck is completely legal. The problem is egress. The neighborhood's sole point of entry and exit is US 1, a major arterial corridor posted at 45 to 50 miles per hour. Because no secondary backroads exist, the vehicle is physically contained. It can reach the intersection legally, but it cannot turn left or right onto the red route. Leaving the neighborhood requires longitudinal travel along that US 1 corridor. It forces a continuous, unavoidable moving violation. The conclusion is severe, but mathematically accurate. The only way a resident of this subdivision can legally transport their fully plated vehicle to another part of town is by loading it onto a trailer. A buyer can attempt to follow every rule, but Florida's sprawling arterial geometry guarantees a statutory moving violation simply to leave the driveway. The physical presence of modern plated key trucks on Florida highways is an illusion built entirely on overlapping federal and state loopholes. Under Statute 316.2122, officers possess undisputed statutory authority to cite these vehicles for non-criminal moving infractions. The primary agencies monitoring these high-speed corridors, the Brevard County Sheriff's Office, local municipal police, and the Florida Highway Patrol, are enforcing that authority. The administrative response is tightening alongside the traffic patrols. The Highway Safety Department's Bureau of Dealer Services is actively auditing licensed dealers for this exact misclassification fraud. A state license plate handed over by a dealership does not overwrite the law. The current key truck market relies on a pairwork arbitrage that evaporates the moment the vehicle merges onto a 45-mile-per-hour road. It leaves the driver holding all the legal exposure and the dealer holding the check.